Bryce Harper and the Phillies, they're getting ready. Frank Klose is down in sunny Clearwater, Florida for Phillies and Blue Jays today. What's going on, Frank?
Not much, Mike. Very hot here. How are you doing?
Very hot here, he says. How about that? I'm doing well. It's very hot in this room. I can tell you that much. So you're down there, Phillies and Blue Jays today. And one of the things I wanted to get in with you is about where the pitching is. Because I have not been seeing a whole heck of a lot about the Phillies starting rotation, getting a whole, like Aaron Nola, Jake Arrieta. I haven't really been reading up a whole heck of a lot on, where those guys are and how they've been looking. Vince Velasquez, they go back with this same rotation as they did a year ago, Frank. How are they looking?
Well, it's really hard to tell based on their grapefruit league performances. Like Vince Velasquez the other day, he did get banged up a bit, but essentially what he was doing was throwing curveball after curveball just to try to work on his curveball. Now, I guess the most telling thing about the starting rotation is what JT Realmuto said about them a couple weeks ago, which was that he did not want to face them when the Marlins came to Philadelphia. He thinks they all have nasty stuff or disgusting stuff to talk about some of the ways that he described the starting rotation. And, the Phillies seem content to sort of roll with these five, not based upon what they feel their potential still is, even though we're kind of waiting around for it. But Pivetta looked really, really good today. I saw as high as 99 on the radar gun down here. A lot of people think that he's going to really put it all together and give them a really solid season sooner. Actually, I even saw one website is somewhere along the way, and it was a national website too, picked Nick Pivetta as one of the potential sleepers for a Cy Young Award, which I thought was definitely a sleeper if there ever was one. But he looks good. Velasquez.
Pivetta for Cy Young, did you say?
Yeah, that's what somebody had him as. I wish I remember who it was off the top of my head, but a lot of people are really high on him and his stuff. I think that's getting a little ahead of yourself there, but now's as good time of any to put together a full nice season for Nick Pivetta. And with Eflin and Velasquez, you want a lefty in there, perhaps replacing one of them, but of those two, neither of them really stands out as somebody you have to have. So I think what they're going to do is they're going to roll with it. They're going to see where these guys go, see how they get to work with JT Realmuto, who does a really nice job with starting pitchers, and having faced them the last several years, he probably has a very different perspective, and he has some ideas that he really wants to see through with these guys. So they're going to get to open the season as the rotation, and then the Phillies still have about $18 million under the luxury tax threshold, where I think that they will add something if they need to. And I know some people have said, well, how can you go into the season without a perfect rotation? But the fact remains that really nobody in the National League East is perfect by any means. Phillies have enough to really dig in there and be among the leaders in the National League East, and they still have some bullets to both financially and with some prospects.
Well, you mentioned it on
somebody along the way.
You mentioned it on Tuesday's show, Frank. I mean, you're getting to the point of the game now. If you sign a guy, he's not going to be ready to pitch probably in the first month of the season.
Right, because I was just talking to somebody a few moments ago here, and well, what about Gio Gonzalez? Can you get him on a cheap 1-year deal? And if you do, I mean, when are you going to actually get to start using him? So, and we saw it took Jake Arrieta a while to sort of get back on track last year. It wasn't until this time last year that he's finally getting some bullpen sessions in here at the Carpenter Complex. So it kind of got off to a slow start, and I think the Phillies at this point, if they're going to add somebody, they don't necessarily want to deal with those slow starts when you can see what you have with these guys and still have the possibility open to add later. But as I was just telling somebody here a little while ago, I would not be shocked if, given the Phillies' relationship with Boris, they have a low 1-year offer on the table for these players with the idea that, Scott Boras can come back to them and say, all right, fine, we'll take it if they can't get anybody else. I think there's still a possibility that they add them, but if they do, it will be very team-friendly for the Phillies.
Do you foresee the Phillies making a play? We just got a text message as I asked you this. Can someone please answer how in the world the Phillies don't have a lefty starter? Do you see them working that angle at all?
Yeah, and I think they're going to keep an eye on Robbie Ray of the Arizona Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks, at least publicly, they're saying they're going to contend this year, and that's, even though they've traded Paul Goldschmidt, which of course was really their their top player for the last many, many years. But they're still telling people they're going to contend, and I think once they officially fall out of it, they're going to start hearing trade discussions on somebody like Robbie Ray, who might be a really, really good fit for the Phillies. If they trade for somebody like Ray, they will have Ray for the remainder of this year and then all of next year. So he's kind of the premier lefty trade candidate that's going to be out there probably this year. And as we saw with JT Realmuto, they're not really afraid to take a risk and make a big deal. So I can see them doing something like that along the way. Plus, you never know who else is going to become available later. Not to keep coming back to the same names over and over again, but some prognosticators really pick the Chicago Cubs to fall off a cliff. And if they do, maybe somebody like Cole Hamels would be available.
That would be interesting. Frank Klose, by the way, Phillies trailing 2-1 to the Blue Jays as they are down there live. Are you at the game today there, Frank?
Yeah, I'm right here. A couple things to note. Bryce Harper got hit by a pitch and left the game after getting hit by the pitch, so we're waiting to see just what that was. It probably was his last at-bat of the game, as it happened in the sixth inning.
It's probably his last at-bat of the spring after getting hit.
Yeah, so he hit the ground, and the Phillies sent Shane Robinson in to run for him. So that's something that'll be worth watching after the game to kind of see where he is in terms of that. I mean, you never know. I'm sure the Phillies would have pulled him anyway, just as a precaution at this point in the spring. But the fans down here were none too pleased.
Frank Klose with the Phillies in Clearwater. A couple other things I want to touch on before we move on. Number one, so we got Hoskins at first, Cesar at second, right? You're going with Segura at short, Franco at third, McCutchen in left, Odubel in center, Bryson right, and Realmuto behind the plate. Do you think that's their opening day lineup?
Probably. The only reason it would not be would be about a health issue. Herrera is yet to still play in a game since we learned that he had a hamstring issue, and then he had the flu. So we're waiting to see him get back to action. Cesar Hernandez back in action yesterday. He played at the game down in Bradenton. So he looks like he's ready to go. He had a hit yesterday. So it seems like the positions belong to both of them, provided there are no any future injuries. And the Phillies have been playing Scott Kingery in center field lately just as a precaution. But all indications are that Herrera will be back in time for opening day. And I'm pretty sure, in that Phillies lineup, even adding Harper really helps, but they still could really use another lefty bat, and Herrera gives that to you. So I think that the job is his to begin the year with.
You got this gluttony of outfielders. You've talked a little bit about it. Quinn, Williams, Altair. What about Cousins, who's had a pretty good spring? Do you foresee one of those guys being moved more likely or being sent to the minors more likely?
I think it'll be a matter of opportunity. It all depends on who the Phillies might be able to acquire. I mean, if the Arizona Diamondbacks, for example, might want to talk deal now, the Phillies would have that opportunity. But I think they would be happy to move a Nick Williams. But it's not a bad thing to have depth at AAA, and it's a shame for those players because certainly any of the last several years, Nick Williams would have been on this roster and probably starting. But you've added Harper, you've added McCutchen. You can't play center field. So that I could see them, if they had everybody back and everybody healthy, them sending Williams to AAA and saying, well, we want to see you get your at-bats because, we still think that you're a tremendous prospect. And then if a player goes down, he comes right back. But ideally, I think, you almost don't want to reduce his value by sending him to the minors, but you kind of reduce his trade value by putting him on the bench at the same time. So if he goes to AAA and lets the world on fire, he might be a good trade candidate. But really, because of McCutchen and Harper in the corners for the next 3 years, he's really not in their immediate plans. And for all the new changes we saw at MLB, it doesn't look like they're going to be doing a DH in the National League just yet. So it's going to be a while before he has an opportunity to crack this lineup.
Yeah, Frank, you wrote about it at 973ESPN.com. I want to ask you just a couple more questions, but we're going to get into some major changes coming to Major League Baseball. We'll get to that in just a minute. First, you projected the 2019 Phillies opening day roster, the 25-man roster, and just looking over that thing, you have Harper, Hoskins, Hernandez, Segura, Franco, Kingery. in the infield. Your outfield is Harper, Herrera, McCutchen, Altair, Williams. You do think Williams will make it there. And then Real Muto and Nat behind the plate. Nola, Arrieta, Pivetta, Vasquez, Eflin as your starters. And then that bullpen will have Robertson, Dominguez, Morgan, Jose Alvarez, Nishak, Neris, Juan Nistico. Jared Eichhoff is very interesting. Tommy Hunter, too, and Roman Quinn, both guys hurt. Eichhoff, what are the plans for him? Is he even in competition for a starting spot?
He is kind of a name only. I think of those three that we keep talking about, the Eflin, Pivetta, Velasquez, he's kind of a tick behind them right now just simply because he has not pitched and needs to show that he can pitch. So I could see one of two things happening. I could see if there's a spot in the bullpen available because Tommy Hunter's hurt. I can see the Phillies getting him an opportunity if he's able to pitch well in relief over the next couple of weeks. He did finally make an appearance in Grapefruit League action. So he's back out on the mound finally. So the Phillies could go one of two ways. One could be that Eichhoff opens camp with the club and is in the bullpen because there's an opening thanks to a Hunter injury. Or they could send him to AAA and he could start and try to build up some stamina and have him ready to go if they have an injury. So it does bear watching. And the shame of it is every time he seems like he's getting better, he has another setback. And for tremendous 2016, you get to see his potential, and he really caught the eyes of a lot of people, even around the league, who thought that he was going to give them some big things on the mound. But injury after injury and setback after setback, he has not had any as of late. He's on the mound, so we'll see what happens with him. And where he ends up probably depends on an injury. I mean, if probably won't start with the five guys that they have who are very durable. And if he's going to make the roster, it's probably in the bullpen only because there's an injury to Tommy Hunter. And Hunter is not going to make the opening day roster, it looks like.
All right, Frank Klose in Philly, real quick. In Clearwater with the Phillies. Major changes coming to MLB. I guess the trade deadline to me is the one thing that really stands out. The Phillies have really prospered from some players in the post deadline over the years. Scott Air helped them in 2008. Matt Stairs, obviously. Jamie Moyer was one of those guys that they got. So you look at that. That's a big, big change. The September call-ups, that's going to be a big difference. I mean, you used to be interested to see who's going to come up and get some time. They're going to put some kibosh on that as well.
Yeah, I think this is going to make the trade deadline a little bit more active in July because right now, or up till now, teams used to say, well, if I can't get the deal I want at the deadline, let's see what happens in August if we're still in it. Well, they have to make that decision a lot sooner if they just can't say, well, let's wait and see what our record is when the time comes. They need to make a decision right then and there. So even the Phillies last year, I think that they missed out on some left-handed starters at the July 31st deadline, and I think they kind of said, well, let's see what's out there. As we get into August, it's still not too late to make a trade, and perhaps they even wrongly thought that somebody like Cole Hamels, who had a high salary and really poor numbers the first half of last year, would be available in August. But now that's not an option. Teams have to make trades before July 31st. Generally, more teams will think that they're in it by July 31st. So I think it'll make the trade deadline a lot more fun to watch.
All right. We look forward to a great season. The Phillies still have 2 weeks left. We'll check in with Frank. Don't forget the mailbag on Tuesday. If you have Phillies questions for Frank, at Frank Klose. Other quick things on some of the changes. The Atlantic League, by the way, is going with a bunch of changes, and they're kind of like a feeder. They're kind of testing them all out. The one that I do like is they're going to let almost like a computer call balls and strikes.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to go over. If you remember, several years ago, there was a device called QuestTech, which kind of was intended to bump the umpires in one direction or the other. And you might remember that Kurt Schilling took a bet to it, I believe, after he didn't like how it was influencing the umpires. I think of all things, that is going to be the thing that players are not going to give up. I think they like the human element of balls and strikes, and I think it will be too loud from the Players Association for balls and strikes. I think they're very happy with replay, getting some of the plays in the field right. But if you got to rely on that computer to call balls and strikes, it's probably going to change the strike zone. Because when they say it's from the knees to the letters right now, umpires kind of have their own interpretation. And certainly the letters, quote unquote, could vary depending on the team. So I think that's one thing the players aren't going to like. I think it's not going to go over well even in the Atlantic League. And I would not be shocked if that's one thing that we never see.
All right, Frank Klose with the Phillies down there today in Clearwater, and, of course, every Tuesday here on the Sports Bash. Thanks, pal. Enjoy the rest of your time there.
Thank you. Have a great weekend, and I'll catch you after your vacation.